Well, okay, I've decided to try to get some word out here about a book that's been out for a few months now. It's an ebook. It's free to anyone that will read it. It's by Wes Penre, written in 2016. It's called Synthetic Intelligence and the Transmutation of Humankind, a roadmap to the singularity and beyond. It's a free ebook. Anybody can download it, look at it on his websites, things like that. But it just doesn't really seem to be getting talked about very much. I do want to kind of say I don't know if it's a disclaimer, that I've looked at quite a bit of Wes Penre's stuff over the last few years. And I'm just fascinated by about at least 80% of it. There's about 10 or 20% of his information that I don't really resonate with, or whatever the word would be. And it's a huge book. I mean, really, if you go to this page, I'll leave links. You'll see that it's a huge book. If it wasn't so big, I might even try to read it all. But it would just take hours and hours of videos to do that. But I just want to really highly encourage people to look it up. But anyway, I am going to kind of go over it. I haven't read the whole thing. I've got to be kind of right up front about that. I haven't read it all yet. I'm just kind of in the middle of it. And artificial intelligence, it does seem like some people have got an interest in learning about it or hearing about it. But it does seem like it's a hard topic to get a lot of real interest in unless you've really got some really great video making skills and can dazzle people and do hours of research to pull out clips of movies and videos, and that's all great. And I think that's what it takes. I don't really have that time. But anyway, I am going to go over this introduction a little bit. And I'm sure I'm going to make some more videos about it. Even just reading, if I read the introduction word for word, it would take, I don't know how long. It would probably be an hour video. But anyway, I am going to try to read as I go here and skip over and a few things like that. You'll see very quickly, I think, some of the things maybe. I don't know about very quickly, but as the video goes on, I'm sure it will come up as to a few of the reasons why I don't really resonate with it all, but I do resonate with a lot of it. And it's not, and there is mention of aliens, and it's not anybody that has followed me or kind of knows my stuff. You know, I don't shy away from the aliens or the annunaki or things like that. It's just more or less applying these names of the Anunnaki and things to other things that just making the jump. Anyway, when we get to those points, I'll try to make my little comments there. You just make your own mind up. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything, period. But I am here, I think, or have been around for quite a while, just trying to get, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I try to get people to open up their mind and look at things just a little bit from a different angle than they are used to, and then decide some things, not look at it and grab hold of an angle and just run with it to the end. But anyway, let's get started. It's the title of the introduction is Artificial Intelligence a Concern? And so the first little section here is different terms used in this book. And before we begin the real discussions, it's a good idea to get a general concept of what we will be discussing in this ebook. First, I need to explain who is behind artificial intelligence. You are probably checking this book out because you've read about this subject somewhere else and are curious to know more, or because you already know a thing or two about it and you're curious to see if there might be something more to learn from this book. You might also belong to a third category of readers, those who are familiar with my previous material. If you are in this third category, you will have no problems with the terms and the topics I will be discussing here. If you're fairly new to this, you might not know that artificial intelligence, or AI, has extraterrestrial origins. This needs to be discussed in detail and understood, or it will be impossible to comprehend the real objectives behind the AI movement. In addition, and preferably before you read this book, I would suggest that you review my earlier work, the Wes Penre papers, the Multiverse series. All right. In this book, he named the most prominent and controlling group of ETs the Alien Invader Force, or the AIF, a group that can be directly compared with Lucifer and the fallen angels of the Bible and those of the Urantia book. In this book, we will discuss the AIF, the Alien Invader Force, and the problems it causes. All right, so then we get into, here's the terms that he will use. Number one, ETs who run the show. The Alien Invader Force, the Overlords, the Cosmic Outlaws, the Gods with a small g, the Fallen Angels, and the Warlords. Their cosmic military force I will call Lucifer's Legions. I sometimes also refer to them as the Annunaki because this is the most common name for this ET group for those who have read Zecharia Sitchin and similar works by other authors and researchers. Number two, ET/human hybrids of the first generation, the power above the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and the Bushes, etc. The administrators for the gods, the controllers and the emissaries of the gods. Number three, the international bankers, CEOs of industry and trade, and top politicians, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Bushes, etc. The minions, note spelled with a capital M. These people are often as human as you and I, but could be ET hybrids as well. And number four, regular corrupt politicians and others not in the know or partially in the know. The minions, spelled with a small m. Puppets. These people are almost always human. Even some heads of the CIA fall into this category, being kept totally in the dark about the real agendas. Interestingly enough, the word controllers includes both the word con, which means to swindle a victim by first winning his or her confidence, dupe, and the word troll, which could denote someone who infiltrates. A typical example is so-called trolls infiltrating forums and comment sections on the internet. Now, this is a topic, I'm not surely not an expert, but I can spot them for the most part, have for quite some time. Not that it's a gift or anything, anybody can spot a troll. But They are everywhere. It's just amazing to me. It really was a shocker to me. I think it was 2012. For better or worse, I was looking at some videos that, let me see, what's her name? Tila Tequila was putting out. She came out real hard and fast on talking about cloning centers and talking about this and talking about that. And I know she's a bimbo, but still, I mean, she was dumping a lot of information out there. And then her page, what fascinated me about it, what even kept me looking at her material, it was an interesting topic, but I knew she was a bimbo. I just didn't. I mean, she had this bunch of followers of people that just all they wanted her to do was get naked the next time or whatever. It was just ridiculous. But in those comments was just comment after comment after comment of some of the most nastiest, filthiest trolls I have ever seen. I mean, and it wasn't, I mean, it was just dozens and dozens of different accounts. I mean, I don't know how many there were. I didn't count. I actually remember I made some screenshots of it because I just could not believe it. How big that it just blossomed. It was just like a flower bed that just suddenly every flower was out all of a sudden. One day all it is a plant. Next day it's just like there's flowers everywhere. It's so beautiful. But this is completely opposite. But it just amazed me. But trolls are everywhere, and they seem to go from topic to topic. I mean, for quite a while they were on chemtrail videos, and then they went from there to I'm just just making examples here, but then they wound up on big pharma videos, anything to do with vaccines or GMOs. I mean, I know that's not big pharma, but GMOs or fluoride or whatever. I mean, it would just be nasty, nasty comments on there with some supposed, evidence that they were right and prove them wrong and blah, 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 just calling people with some of the nastiest names. These trolls really got my attention, and they still do in a sense, because most people are smart enough not to fall for it, but some people, they are there, I think, just to get those that are starting to really try to pay attention, and they start reading this mainstream explanations of how vaccines, you're an idiot if you think that vaccines might harm anyone. You're an idiot if you think GMOs are nothing but just great science. You're an idiot if you think anything in the sky you see is anything more than just a contrail, vapor trail. And anyway, you know what I'm saying. I've spent too much time on this already, but anyway, this interesting that Wes Penre here talks about the troll part of the word controllers is he's associating that with someone who infiltrates. A typical example is so-called trolls infiltrating forums and comment sections on the internet. I'll say this and shut up about the trolls. I mean, they are very good at even shutting down over time video makers that might be they might have something to say that people need to hear, but by the time they read all the troll comments and start taking it personally, start letting it get to them, it can just stifle them. It's just not worth it. And then you got the real idiots that will believe the trolls and start performing like a troll themselves without even being rewarded for it. That's the real problem. Okay, let's continue going here. The emissaries have managed to misinform and disinform us on a number of different subjects, and the truth is often more or less the opposite from what we've learned in grade school, college, and universities. This makes it hard to let go of old programming, beliefs, and paradigms that we are holding on to, and often we are not even consciously aware that we are holding on to old beliefs that don't serve us well. The test is to let go of them all one by one. Now, here again, I mean, this even brushes up against some of the things that I, don't really necessarily resonate with. Maybe it's because I'm holding on to something. I'm sure that some will just immediately assume that. But I do think that there are some basic truths, and they've been, like a lot of other subjects, they have been just completely watered down. And if we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, then we are a controlled idiot. And so I don't go there. But anyway, according to Wes, according to a lot of others, the smart thing to do is to let go of them all. So I don't necessarily go there, but I will say that for the most part, probably 95%, yeah. Such as peeling an onion, and our real free-thinking self comes to the surface. When we reach this state, it will become quite difficult to manipulate. Now, this next section is how references are used in this book, and it's just explaining. Most of it comes from mainstream media or from the horse's mouth. He does put tons of references in the book as we go along. Each chapter has footnotes. So we'll scroll on down. How to use discernment. Because of the wealth of data and information flooding the internet, it can be extremely difficult to discern truth from fiction. What is definitely true, however, is that we can't use only our intellect, believing that this is enough. At times, even more important than the left brain intellect is intuition and what I sometimes call inner discernment. When evaluating data and information, most people only use their logical, analytical mind and forget that they need to add intuition and body reactions into the equation. Only if we do all of this and become good at it and sensitive enough to it can we more easily discern good information from disinformation. The disinformation campaigns these days are so cleverly done that using our intellect is definitely not enough. This is why some highly intelligent people still can't see beyond what's in front of their eyes. They evaluate data only from a physical perspective. If it can't be proven with the five senses, it's not valid. These people miss out on the entire metaphysical spectrum. However, as a rule of thumb, be critical of everything you hear and read from mainstream society and media. Okay, I had to take care of a phone call there, but anyway, I'm going to pick up reading right here. However, as a rule of thumb, be critical of everything you hear and read from the mainstream society and media. Then be even more critical of anyone who is exposing mainstream society and media. Always look for potential hidden agendas, such as gaining trust among alternative researchers and truth seekers, only to later add disinformation to the soup. Finally, be most critical of yourself and do not believe something because you want to believe. Look for motives in everything. When these criteria are met, there might be some few insights to gain. All right, so let's go on down here to this next section. What is intuition? Some schools of thought teach that you are a soul spirit in a body, and that's all there is to it. The soul supposedly is the part of you who thinks, solves problems, and is in charge of things in your own universe. After you're dead, the soul moves on and only the body succumbs. Because the body is mortal, it's not of any greater significance. At least this is what we are taught. To believe this is a mistake, however. Your body is phenomenal in more than a few ways. You can talk to your body. You can think to and with your body. You can think to and with your body, and you can give your body compliments and love. If you don't do so, you're going to have a wonderful relationship with it, and you and your body will work together to learn about new things and to raise your vibrations into higher states of consciousness. All right. This is going to help you in your discernment when it comes to deciding what is real and what is not. Let me skip on down here. I'll start reading right here. The body is like an intermediary between your spiritual world and the third dimensional 3D personality. If you acknowledge your body as something more than a piece of meat and bones, you will get a response when you ask or tell it something. Sometimes you might get an instant reaction from your body, and other times it will take a while. You just need to be patient. Often it will take some practice to build a good relationship with your body, but once it is established, it will be very rewarding. Your body is also your antenna to other dimensions. It filters what comes in, and when a good relationship is established, after you've learned to trust your body instead of fearing it, it will give you good information. I'll just stop right there and just say that I don't know that I've necessarily experienced it so much, but I do know people that swear, or they will claim, or they're just convinced that they have healed themselves of different things that's been a problem not just by talking to their body, but by knowing how to talk to their body, and also um, doing it. And then it's a broad subject. It's a big subject, and it's one that needs to be talked about. Um, I'll start right here. In summary, love your body unconditionally and start listening to it. It's cleverer than you and I with our egos getting in the way. You can't reach above a certain state of consciousness on this planet unless you use the psychic abilities that exist inside of you, inside of your body. Go inside for answers is an excellent idiom. Then the next section of this introduction is Fire, Avatar, and Our Place in the Universe. And I don't know, I'm not going to really read much of this. I will read the first paragraph. Although there are beings living on planets throughout the universe, this is not always the norm. Many beings live in what we call space, or in the stars, hence star beings. I don't know if this is true or not. This is what Wes Penre says, and I'm not claiming that it's true. I know this is not necessarily what some people believe or will even go there, and that's okay. I understand it. I'm not promoting it. I do think that he has some excellent research here. Starting the second paragraph, when we are free from manipulation, we will see the universe as it really is, whereas we are manipulated into only perceiving 4% of it. And even that 4% is compromised. All right, I'm going to skip on down. And some people might really resonate with this as well. I also understand that. I'm not skipping this because of any other reason other than I don't really know that it applies so much to really the main topic of this. He's leading up to it. So I'm going to read this paragraph right here. Each person is a splinter of his or her soul, depending on how many splinters of that soul were trapped by Enki, also known as Lucifer, long ago. Now, this is also something that's controversial with people that have read Zecharia Sitchin or whatever. If you're familiar with the Anunnaki story and who Enki is, who Enlil is, blah, blah, blah. But Wes Penre does come out with a little controversial thing as far as that research goes, and claims that he believes that Enki is Lucifer. All right, let's start reading again right here. That soul were trapped by Enki, also known as Lucifer, long ago. The same number of minds are not retrievable by the soul, so long as they're trapped here. All these minds, including other souls' minds, together become the human soul group, although it could just as well be called the human mind group. These minds are captured in this 3D reality until they are able to release themselves. There is a way to do this, fortunately, and I will bring that up in the end part of this book. This might be an entirely new concept to most readers and might seem difficult to grasp at first. And if so, a second and third review of this section is advisable until this important model is totally grasped. Once it clicks, it should create an aha moment. Because time technically does not exist, every present moment has to be recreated constantly on a level of existence that some quantum physicists call the subquantum. Unlike here on Earth, where the illusion of time creates a linear timeline concept, it's different for other star beings. They too can create a chain of events that might seem linear while they are happening, but when an event is over, it's a present time memory happening in parallel with any new event that's occurring. We locate ourselves where we have our focus. The past and the future, however, can always be recreated in the present by a soul who can focus enough to do so. In a way, animals are much better at this than humans are. Animals are more in the present, where it's the moment that counts. They are not as stuck in linear time as we are. Hence, we can see a dog recreating the same excitement every time mom or dad comes home, as if it was the first time it happened. All right. So, whether you resonate with that or not, I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not saying I do or don't. I'm reading a book here and or reading from an introduction to a book, and that's just the end of it. All right. In the WPP, I gave some predictions of what is going to happen. Now this, I have to back up here. This is the rapid expansion of the AI movement. That's the title of this section of the introduction. And he's saying he had given some predictions of what's going to happen in the near future concerning the machine kingdom, or also known as the New World of Artificial Intelligence, AI. Unfortunately, a majority of these predictions have already been fulfilled since I finished the papers in April to May of 2015, and there are now open discussions about artificial intelligence all over the media. The controllers want us to get used to the idea that AI is the new reality for mankind. In the WPP, I wrote that in the very near future, people will have sex with robots instead of having sex with human partners, because with robots, people can drop the responsibility part that goes with having sex with a human. There's no drama, I guess, is what they're saying. He's saying robots have no demands or feelings. I wrote that people will even marry their robots. More about that later in the book. Little did I know at the time that I was writing about something that would be discussed in the open just a few months later. The last part of 2015 was the time when a wide exposure of the artificial intelligence agenda was being made in the media. The idea is to prepare people for what is to come. In the first few chapters of this book, we will put Dr. Raymond Kurzweil under scrutiny. He has been a spokesman for artificial intelligence since he was a teenager, and he is now in his 60s. He has held numerous lectures, possibly been given just as many interviews, and written a number of books on the subject, overtly discussing all the details about the plans for a united humanity in what he calls the Singularity. His most detailed and best-selling book is his latest, The Singularity is Nearer, which was released in 2005. In one of his video presentations, he says, and I quote him directly from one of the video monologues, quote, "The term singularity is a metaphor borrowed from physics. Physics dictates that in the gravity of a black hole, which also increases exponentially as it is approached, there is a threshold distance away from the center, the event horizon, past which nothing can return." Unquote. As if this doesn't sound eerie enough, he further says that the goal of artificial intelligence is the singularity, and he expands on this term by saying that it means, in layman's terms, that by 2045 we will have cloned the human brain into its smallest details. This brain template will then be used as an artificial computer system that will connect all other human brains on this planet, including yours and mine if he gets his way. From there, we will all be as one mind in many bodies, which, by the way, will become part machine and part biological, centrally controlled from this superbrain. Kurzweil is quick to add that we will have our own personality intact, but we will also be telepathically connected to this global electronic network. After that, and this will be stunning for the readers of the WPP, as it is mentioned there over and over, the intention is to let this new cyborg hybrid race travel out in space, although Kurzweil says that he does not believe that there are any aliens out there. He, for some reason, uses the word conquer in this context. He says that the new human hybrids will go out and conquer space. Note that in his circles, the choice of words is crucial, and it's very rare that mistakes are made by this level of insiders. The word conquer is most certainly consciously chosen in order to hide the real agenda in plain sight. The cyborg human conquering space is exactly what I wrote about in the WPP. Those who don't want to mentally face this subject might call it impossible, or they will call it science fiction, although it's evidently anything but. Some might even say that this is Kurzweil's delusional agenda, which has nothing to do with the real world. This is incorrect. Kurzweil is, as mentioned above, only one spokesman of many on this subject, as we will see. Moreover, mainstream media, in all their different formats, are all over this right now, and the topic is being openly discussed. We can even see it happening around us. Kurzweil writes in the Singularity is Near that they can't do this without our consent, and that is so important. I know that Wes Penre will emphasize this. And that's the main reason I'm even trying to put stuff out in what little I do put out these days. If I didn't really kind of believe this, they can't do this without our consent. They can't do a lot of things without our consent. So the more people that are stopping to think a minute before they give their consent, the less and less power these people have. So that in and of itself is kind of, and I'm not reading here, hopefully you understand that, but that in and of itself is the reason why I think it's important that we continue fighting, even though it's so hard to do. It's so hard to face this stuff. It's so hard to put up with the negativity that's that we receive as a result. But anyway, let's read this again. They can't do this without our consent. So they need to inform us about both the advantages and disadvantages, which he admits exist, for humanity to make an informed decision. Hence, he welcomes an open discussion on the subject. This, however, is a contradiction to what is actually being played out. Kurzweil is playing the role of a scientist of great integrity who only wants to inform us so that we can make a balanced decision, but in the next breath he boasts about how quickly this whole scientific movement is progressing. Why do they let the movement progress if people haven't yet made up their minds about it yet? If he wants our consent, shouldn't it all be kept on hold until everybody is informed and have made a democratic decision? No, they don't care, and besides, we don't live in a democracy. It's just a dog and pony show, and they think we won't notice that we basically have no vote on the matter. I think we do have a vote on the matter. It's just not. It just don't play out like a democracy would. It's kind of like you have to let the universe know that you do not consent, and the universe then, I think, or God, or however we want to look at it, hears us. But if we don't let our voice be heard to God, in my opinion, then we are giving our consent. All right. In fact, our silence is our consent. That's exactly what I was trying to say. We let it happen, and therefore we indirectly agree to the agenda. And we humans are responsible for our own evolution. All right, I'm just going to skip down some more. I'm going to read the last paragraph of this section. In humanity's case, the second way is most common. It has gone so far that most people are not even aware of that they are manipulated into an agreement with the criminals. Still, the effect would be the same. We are adjusting to whatever the administrators and the AIF are manipulating us into. The cosmic outlaws and their emissaries are well aware of this, but continue to proceed with their agenda anyway, knowing they will get our indirect consent on a continuing basis because the game is rigged. On the other hand, they have already informed us, again indirectly, by creating all these new movies about AI and killer robots. Thus far, very few people have protested, thinking it is all science fiction because it's presented as such. However, indirectly, the minions, capital M, have properly informed us about the danger of AI, and for all they care, we gave our consent by not protesting against their propaganda in any large numbers. Those who protest are just conspiracy nuts anyway. This is how it is being done. Their defense before a higher galactic court would be for them to say, no one can seriously propose that we didn't warn them, speaking in terms of humanity. Alright, so then we get down to the next section, the Nazis and AI. And I'm just glancing at my timer on the video. It looks like I'm going to probably be an hour without reading every word, but I am rambling on here, so maybe if I read it word for word, it might have been less. I don't know. But anyway, the Nazis and AI. As mentioned earlier in this prologue, 2015 was the year of AI exposure of great magnitude in the mainstream media. Dr. Ray Kurzweil's books have been out for decades now, but the general public hasn't paid too much attention to them, being one thing too many to deal with, and TV reality shows have been more important for most people than learning about what the controllers have planned for us. Hence, the population has had little knowledge about what is really coming down the pike, although it's been revealed to us for many years in one form or another. Of course, Kurzweil and his ilk knew this would happen, and it's been part of the plan to let us know what they are planning without having us interfering. However, not until this year has the media got a go-ahead by those in charge to expose the plans in public on internet sites such as CNN, ABC, NBC, and other channels with a large number of international viewers. And I'm going to skip on down there. I'll just start right here where my mouse is. Finally, those who don't have any children and therefore think this does not apply to them are incorrect. Much of it is happening right now before our eyes, and the majority of people don't notice. This is how powerful the propaganda is, and it works in at least two ways. It manipulates us into accepting the singularity by making it interesting and exciting, and it shows us the agenda in plain sight, so we can't say we weren't told beforehand. Some might wonder how the ones in control know so much about us and how we think, but it's actually quite obvious if we know our history. The intense research into the human mind began on a large scale during World War II with Nazi scientists such as Dr. Joseph Mengele, looking into the human psyche and the human brain on deeper levels. And if you've been awake for a while, or awakening, or whatever you want to call it, you've probably heard of Dr. Joseph Mengele over and over again. But I challenge you to even mention his name to the average person that's not looked into this stuff. And the reaction you might get, and I've actually had this reaction lately, I forgot his name for a minute, and then it came to me and I said, oh, I'm talking about Joseph Mengele. And they say who, and then they say who, why do you, their eyes say, why are you even wasting your life looking at this stuff? Who's that? Blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm talking about. So this is not really even such a criticism of them as it is pointing out that I know it's hard to kind of know this stuff or be on the trail of this stuff and then try to talk about it and without sounding like a complete loony, just to mention somebody like Joseph Mengele. Dr. Green was one of his aliases. And people don't have a clue. Anyway, these criminal scientists experimented on twins, war prisoners, Jews, gypsies, and other, for them, unwanted minorities, and the experiments were often unimaginably cruel. They started compartmentalizing the brain by using trauma-based mind control. They could then program these traumatized parts of the brain with new personalities that could be triggered by words, certain hand signals, a phone call, or otherwise. This research was then brought to America after the war in something called Project Paperclip. Nazi scientists were smuggled to the U.S. to start working for what was later to become the CIA, NSA, FBI, NASA, and other key organizations within and above U.S. government levels. The experiments on the human brain and mind then became known in the U.S. as MK-Ultra. MK stands for mind control, where control is the German word. I don't know how to say it in German, so I'll say it the way it looks. Control with a K is the German word for the American or the English word control, spelt with a C. The CIA cryptonym MK probably originates from the joint efforts between the US and Germany to create a totally mind-controlled, easy-to-manage population. Now, at the risk of not being able to find my spot real quick, I'm going to scroll down here instead of throwing a picture in, editing the video. I think there's a picture. Yeah, right there it is. Here's a picture of the lineup of 104 rocket scientists of Operation Paperclip at Fort Bliss. Werner von Braun, the famous Nazi rocket scientist. Dr. Joseph Mengele standing, face half covered in the middle of the second row, having raven dark hair. They were smuggled out of Nazi Germany to the U.S. after World War II. They avoided prosecution in the Nuremberg Tribunal for crimes against humanity. If they had been convicted, they would have been executed. All right, so I'm going to go back up here and see if I can find where I left off. All right, right here it is. However, this is not the only reason they started researching the depth of the brain and the mind. It had everything to do with AI and the singularity. I want to make it totally clear. What people call the New World Order and the One World Government is nothing but the singularity, i.e. the goal to create a super brain that will control all other brains and minds on this planet. I think, and I can't remember if this is in this book or not, but I've thought for a long time that that's what the internet was created for as well. It's to tie in our mind. It's a tool that they're wanting to use, even though they have to put up with a lot of us learning the truth about things for a while. I really do think that the internet, we've got to know when it's time individually to cut our ties with the internet, because I do think that it's a huge tool that they're going to use for this. All right. Other branches of MK-Ultra were later established, such as the infamous Project Monarch and more. All these branches of mind control had one thing in common, which was to learn everything about the human brain and mind in order to later create the superbrain computer, which is a term for a super-controlled collective consciousness. The astute reader might now wonder why the overlords would need to study the human brain when, after all, they were the ones who manipulated our DNA in the first place. Wouldn't they already know how it works? Yes, they knew how the human brain worked when they created it many millennia ago. Here we go. Who created humans? It's It's just some people will resonate, some people will not. I'm not saying I do or don't. I would lean not, but I don't have any problem with agreeing that these beings did manipulate DNA. I don't really have a problem with that. But anyway, yes, they knew how the human brain worked when they created it many millennia ago, but human consciousness constantly changes the neural pathways in the brain by creating new neural pathways as we learn new things. And the pathways in the brain get rearranged into new patterns to adapt to new versions of reality. For the overlords, it's not just a matter of cloning the human brain. It also has to be compatible with the human soul, the way the soul is interacting with the brain in present time, not in some distant past. The mass consciousness is not vibrating within the exact same frequency band as it did when Homo sapiens were first created. Nevertheless, the complete cloning of the brain, I suspect, was achieved already decades ago. The only job left is to convince the majority of mankind that what is to come is good for us. This is where puppets like Ray Kurzweil come into the picture. Kurzweil sees himself as a visionary. Other ways in which we have become tricked are the internet and other electronic devices such as smartphones and plasma TVs, which all have spy devices embedded in them, so that certain organizations can spy on the viewer even when the device is turned off. TV, in fact, was a forerunner to the computer and the internet. The letter agencies and the overlords wanted to observe human behavior and which choices we are most likely to make in any given situation. The motto was one TV in every home. That turned into a similar motto a few decades later. The goal is at least one PC in every home. Then the internet came down upon us. Most people think that this was an enormous achievement, and so much more can be studied and learned so much quicker. The administrators and the AIF don't care what you put on the internet or what you learn from there, and I'll disagree with that. Well, no, I'll finish it up because I might not disagree. As long as you don't step on the toes of their most current secret programs that they don't want to be exposed for any given reason. Yeah, I'll agree with that. As long as you're not exposing what they really don't want exposed, they could care less what's on the internet. But there are things that they do not want exposed. As long as you don't do that, you're relatively safe to say whatever you want on the net without any serious retribution. After all, the internet is there to study human behavior in present time and to monitor and store all data we so voluntarily put out on the net. You know, just talking about this current farce of an election that we are here in the U.S. Between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I mean, there's been, I think, 3 or 4 people that have lost their jobs. I mean, or lost their, anyway, been taken off the air at least temporarily if they even mention anything about Hillary Clinton's supposed health problems. And trying to tie it into anything like Parkinson's disease. I mean, it's one thing you can talk about Hillary's health, but if you start talking about Parkinson's disease and things like that in a public forum in a way that, say, a few million people are actually paying attention, then people get shut down. And I'm not a Michael Savage fan, but evidently he was taken completely off the air for mentioning, at least for one day. His show was taken off for at least one day when he mentioned one big pharma drug that's probably in Hillary's medicine cabinet that has to do with Parkinson's. Evidently, there's either something to that or it's all just a big hoax. I don't know which. I mean, it might have just been to give it more credibility when it's really a lie. I don't know. But anyway, right here, the internet was released as the World Wide Web from having been a military network before it was implemented for the public. Now, I mean, I could get into a little bit here about the Mandela effect thing. Some people may not have heard about it. Some people are convinced it's all a hoax or whatever. But we've always been taught, kind of in general, that the internet was created by the military. or it was you know. And then several months ago, I started running into, and of course, it makes sense that no, CERN created the internet, and it's always been known that CERN created the internet. And then you get people that start scratching their head and saying, "Well, look, I didn't even hear of CERN until I don't know, 2008 maybe, or maybe 2000 or something." But no, the CERN's been around since the 1950s, I think, and they created the internet and blah blah blah. What? I'm not saying that they didn't. I don't have a clue, but right here it's assumed that it was a military network. CERN, maybe they created it for the military, or maybe the military was the perfect place to, put it out there and use it until they got it a little bit more perfected. That's probably kind of what's going on there. And that's what this next line says. Virtually everything is tested in the military before we get to see it. The internet is, on a grander scale, an attempt to understand human unpredictability and to determine how to get people on the same page. I would imagine that the controllers have asked themselves, how much do the humans know? How much do they care about important issues, and how much do they care about trivial things? How social are they? How alike are they in all their uniqueness? The AIF wants these questions answered. Some of these beings are quite psychic and can read the mass consciousness without machines, but the internet was still important because they wanted to see how easily we are distracted from a focus point. The fact that humans are easily distracted becomes embarrassingly apparent in the different discussion forums, where someone starts a topic of relevance and others comment on it. By so-called trolling, the letter agencies then make comments on the forum thread that have nothing to do with the original subject, and almost immediately people's attention goes from the focal point to the distraction. And a lot of times the troll will intentionally put themselves as the distraction. They'll say something that will just, they'll even say something that they know they're going to get personally attacked for, so then they can sit there and defend themselves and then start attacking the other person. I think that's kind of what's being said here. This is specifically true when the troll begins to insult one or more people responding to a thread. People become easily reactive and divert from the topic in order to defend themselves. That is something that I have felt the need to work on over the last few years, is to not instantly just start defending myself and getting all worked up. I do interact with trolls sometimes, not to feed them, but to try to get them to hang themselves, give them enough rope to hang themselves. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. But and when it don't, then it's easy for somebody else to say, "Oh, you're just feeding the trolls." But anyway, others then fill in to defend the person who is attacked. But then it talks about Twitter, smartphones, how all this stuff is used. Google Plus is even mentioned right here. Facebook's big. But most of these people, most of you know what is going on here. So I'll start reading right here. It is obvious to me that the overlords, who are the equivalent to the old Sumerian gods, are already here in great numbers. I also believe that the Lord Enki is back already as well. And of course, his son Marduk, the Lord of this world, has been here for centuries, after he supposedly had left the planet for a while before then. It is soon time for Enki to regain his leading position here on Earth, but the question is whether Marduk will let him. More about this later. What the AIF is waiting for is the singularity, i.e. when the biological human body is fully integrated with the machine and the superbrain computer is in operating mode. CERN in Switzerland is playing a role in accomplishing this goal, as we will discuss in this book. Okay, then we get to the section called Disclosure of the ET Phenomenon. I'm going to say this right here, meant to say for a long time. It says for long. Many people in the UFO community have anticipated that there will soon be a disclosure of the ET presence on our planet. It is believed, generally speaking, that the governments of the world, with the U.S. government being the forerunner, will come clean on the subject. I believe this is naive thinking. The governments have too much to lose because of all the crimes that must be revealed in the same breath. Alright, I'm going to skip on down. Right here, the fact is that none of the above is the real reason why a full disclosure will not happen. The real reason is because it's not up to the government to decide when or if a disclosure will take place. It's up to the overlords who control the government and the rest of the world. You know, it's not been that long ago that people were saying, oh, I think Obama's a good guy and he's going to disclose. He's going to do it, you know. And then about election time, you know, that's somebody will kind of slip out there that so-and-so said, Hillary said that she got in there, she would do a thorough investigation of all these these documents about the UFOs and the ETs and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just to get a few people on the edge of their seat really thinking that they mean it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Right here. Those familiar with my previous work know quite well that the overlords only want partial incremental disclosure, which will probably eventually culminate in their appearance before us. However, even when the gods reappear in the open, we will not be told the truth about them, only the cover story. The cover story and a part of the partial disclosure is the propaganda about the good ETs who want to make contact. The cover story tells us there are only good ETs in the Earth's vicinity at this time. The bad ETs have all left our planet and our solar system, or so it is claimed. This is promoted by different UFO researchers and is, of course, a very dangerous message. And taking into consideration that these spokespersons reach millions of people, they have a huge responsibility not to be gullible or to give information they guarantee is true when it's actually not. Some of the spokespersons are just that, gullible, and just parrot some prominent spokesperson who seem to intentionally give the wrong information. And these spokespersons might not at all be who people think they are. Some of them might be on the military-industrial complex and the intelligence community payroll, convincing us that the ETs who want to make themselves known are all benevolent and that we should embrace all of them without discernment is what disclosure or partial disclosure involves. Of course, free energy and other benefits that come with partial disclosure are on the overlord's agenda anyway. It's all needed for the singularity to take effect. What these disclosure and free energy projects won't say, or don't know in certain cases perhaps, is that when it's commonly believed that these grassroots projects are gaining results, it's not because of their genuine involvement of freeing mankind, it's because such a disclosure was already planned by the AIF. I think that this is quite obvious. We humans are easily duped because that's how it's always been and always will be so long as the overlords are in charge. This book will build up to a quite disturbing climax, and this information is not for everybody, but it is for those who are brave enough to confront the ultimate purpose with AI and the singularity. However, we will start out lightly by getting familiar with one of the AI movement's greatest spokespersons, Dr. Raymond Kurzweil, and that's the end of the introduction, and the first chapter is about Dr. Raymond Kurzweil. And then from here on down, we have the footnotes of this introduction. Well, like I said, you can look at the book yourself and get to the footnotes. But I think I will include at the end of this video, at the risk of maybe getting a copyright strike, who knows, but this 7-minute video from Ray Kurzweil. If you click this link, it'll take you to, well, let me click it here and show you. takes you to this right here at the website's Big Think, the Singularity of Ray Kurzweil. And it says you can listen to Kurzweil. I don't even spell his name right there, but you can listen to him explaining the singularity below and decide for yourself if you believe his predictions are the not too distant future. So if you've made it this far in the video, thanks for hanging in there. I'll probably make a few more or some more videos about this book as I read through it and things. But it's just a huge piece of work, and take a few minutes and see if it might be something you want to dig into. And if you don't resonate with all of it, don't throw it all away. I really think that it's worth your while to try to take what you can from it and throw the rest away if you can't deal with it or if you don't agree with it. It's all a personal decision. All right, so that's it for this one. Talk to you when I do. Take care.
Well, by 2020, we'll have computers that are powerful enough to simulate the human brain, but we won't be finished yet with reverse engineering the human brain and understanding its methods. One of my main themes, and I've developed this thesis over 30 years, is that information technology grows exponentially. The power of computers, our understanding of the human brain, the spatial resolution of brain scanning, the number of bits we move around the internet. Many different measures of information technology double every 1 year, every 11 months, 13 months, depending on what you're measuring. So these technologies will be 1 million times more powerful within 20 years. 20 years. In fact, the speed of exponential growth is itself speeding up. So in 25 years, these technologies will be 1 billion times more powerful than they are today. And we've already seen that kind of progress. When I was an undergraduate, we all shared a computer at MIT that took up half a building. The computer on your cell phone today is 1 million times cheaper and 1,000 times more powerful. That's a billion-fold increase in price performance of computing since I was an undergraduate. By 2029, and I've been quite consistent on this date, we will have completed the reverse engineering of the human brain. And we've already made very good progress on that. We've reverse engineered a number of different regions, like the cerebellum, which is responsible for our skill formation, and slices of the cerebral cortex where we do our recursive thinking, and the auditory cortex, the visual cortex, and so on. By 2029, we'll have reverse engineered and modeled and simulated all the regions of the brain, and that will provide us the software, algorithmic methods to simulate all of the human brain's capabilities, including our emotional intelligence. And computers at that time will be far more powerful than the human brain. And we'll be able to create machines that really do have the subtlety and suppleness of human intelligence. And they'll combine that power with ways in which machines are already superior to us. They can harness all of human knowledge with a few keystrokes. It can remember billions of things accurately. They can share knowledge at electronic speeds that are 1 million times faster than human language. So it'll be a very powerful combination. But the last point I'll make is that it's not some alien invasion of intelligent machines coming from Mars to invade us. It's coming from within our civilization. And the whole point of it is to extend our reach. Ever since we picked up a stick to reach a higher branch, we've used our tools to extend our reach. We can now already extend our reach mentally. I can take out a device from my pocket and access all of human knowledge with a few keystrokes. Half the farmers in China have these devices and can do the same thing. It is spawning a real cultural revolution in China and around the world, and these tools are continuing to grow exponentially in power. The singularity is not just that point where we achieve human level of intelligence in a machine. That will start a new revolution where these machines will continue to grow exponentially in power. They'll be able to actually improve their own software design. By 2045, we'll have expanded the intelligence of our human-machine civilization 1 billion-fold. that will be a singularity. And we borrowed this metaphor from physics to talk about an event horizon that's hard to see beyond. Well, it's not the case that I'm only looking at the optimistic side. I mean, I am an optimist, and I do think we've been helped more than we've been hurt by technology already. Human life expectancy was 37 in 1800, and human life was very hard, disaster-prone, labor-filled, disease-filled, and so on. But I've actually written extensively about the dangers of all this. Bill Joy's article on the cover of Wired magazine, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us, which talked about the grave dangers of genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics, came from my book. He says at the beginning of the article he got these ideas from my book, The Age of Spiritual Machines. And chapter 8 of The Singularity is Near is called The Deeply Intertwined Promise versus Peril of GNR, Genetics, Nanotechnology, and Robotics. I'm working extensively with the Army to develop a rapid response system to deal with the possible abuse of biotechnology. So about the same technologies that are empowering us to reprogram biology away from cancer and heart disease could also be used by a bioterrorist to reprogram a biological virus to be more deadly or more communicable. And the good news is we actually have the scientific tools to defend ourselves, just like we defend ourselves from software viruses with a rapid response system. And we need to put a system like that in place. But it's not accurate to say that I'm only painting a rosy future and that I have a utopian vision. My vision's not utopian. The power of these technologies will grow exponentially. I believe that is inexorable. That has gone on for the last 110 years since the 1890 census. What we do with these technologies is not preordained. That future history has not been written. I am very concerned about the downsides. I've written extensively about them, and in fact I'm working on defending against those. I am optimistic that we will get more promise than peril, but they both exist. Technology has been a double-edged sword ever since fire and stone tools. Well, I've been very active in talking about the downside of technology, and there are dangers. A danger we face right now is the ability for a bioterrorist to use our biological sciences to reprogram a biological virus to be deadly or communicable. And we have the ideas to combat that, but they're not yet in place. And so I think that's an existential risk we need to deal with very quickly. There'll be new dangers from these new technologies. I mean, I'm optimistic, but not sanguine. And I'm not necessarily convinced that we won't encounter painful episodes. I think overall we'll be helped more than we're hurt. But I mean, you only have to look at the 20th century. We had 180 million people die in the wars of the 20th century. That scale of destruction was made possible by technology. We've also helped ourselves enormously, because human life expectancy was 48 in 1900. So we need to address these dangers and downsides. I mean, that's what worries me.